Cancer does not begin the day you hear the diagnosis. It starts earlier, quietly. While blood vessels are changing, inflammation is building, and the body's repair systems are slowly getting weaker. What you drink every day can either feed that process or help slow it down. I'm Dr. Steve Collins, and this matters more than most people realize. Because when we talk about recovery, prevention, and long-term resilience, we are really talking about what your cells are bathing in all day long. Your fluids are not background noise, they are biological signals. They shape inflammation, insulin traffic control, immune tone, blood flow, and even the way your tissues repair themselves. So let's get straight into the drinks that can help support regeneration, protect metabolic health, and potentially make the internal environment less friendly to disease. And then, because this is where most people get completely blindsided, we need to talk about the drinks and the add-ins that quietly cancel every single one of those benefits out. The first one is TEA. And not because it feels soothing. The real story is far more interesting than that. Tea contains polyphenols. These are plant compounds that interact directly with oxidative stress, inflammation, and cell signaling. Why does that matter? Because chronic inflammation acts like a slow fire inside the body, and slow fire changes the terrain where disease grows. What keeps showing up in the research is that people who drink tea regularly, especially green tea, tend to show better metabolic stability and lower inflammatory pressure. That is not a small detail. When insulin is more controlled and inflammation is lower, the body has more room to repair instead of constantly defending itself. Now here is where it gets fascinating. Green tea is rich in something called EGCG. That is a polyphenol that influences how cells respond to stress. One of the body's biggest jobs is replacing damaged cells without creating chaos. What the research suggests is that green tea may support that repair environment in a very real, very practical way. And if you are dealing with fatigue, slow recovery, or that drained but restless feeling that never fully goes away, this becomes even more relevant. Stress hormones can stay elevated when the body has been through a lot. When cortisol stays high, sleep deteriorates, recovery slows down, and the immune system becomes less coordinated. Tea appears to help calm some of that pressure. That is one reason many people feel more stable with it. But now watch this carefully, because most people stop at green tea and miss the bigger pattern entirely. Black tea matters too. Research suggests it may also support circulating stem cell activity. Stem cells are the body's raw repair reserve. They matter because tissues cannot recover well if the bench is empty. So this is not just about one trendy drink. It is about a broader category of tea working through overlapping mechanisms: antioxidant defense, stress modulation, vascular support, and repair signaling. That means the win here may not be perfection. The win may be consistency. There is a catch though, and this is exactly where people accidentally neutralize the upside. When you add dairy, some of those helpful compounds can become far less available to the body. Here is the mechanism. Proteins in dairy can bind to key polyphenols, and if those compounds are tied up, your tissues may not receive the same biological effect. Practical takeaway. If tea is one of your daily tools, try it plain or with an unsweetened plant alternative. See how your body responds over time. That sounds like a tiny adjustment. It is not. Small inputs repeated every single day change the internal environment. We do not need a miracle. We need friction removed from the habits that already support repair. And think about this for a moment. How many people genuinely believe they are making a healthy choice, while one add-in is quietly undoing the very thing they were trying to get right? That is the kind of detail that changes long-term outcomes. The second drink is coffee. And this surprises people because coffee usually gets dragged into a shallow conversation about energy, jitters, or whether it is simply good or bad. That framing is far too simple. Coffee is biologically active. It contains polyphenols and other compounds that directly affect blood flow, inflammation, and the gut ecosystem. Let's break that down properly. Better blood flow means better oxygen delivery, and that matters because tissues heal better when oxygen and nutrients actually reach them. Your muscles perform better, your brain runs cleaner, and your recovery systems are no longer forced to operate with one hand tied behind their back. This is part of why moderate coffee intake can make people feel mentally sharper. It is not only stimulation, it may also be about circulation and signaling. When the vascular system functions well, the whole body feels less stuck. There is another layer. Coffee appears to support the microbiome. It can help beneficial gut bacteria thrive. And that matters enormously because your gut is not just digestion, it is an immune training ground. A healthier gut ecosystem helps regulate inflammation systemically, which then influences everything from metabolic flexibility to how aggressively the immune system reacts to threats. That is the contradiction most people never hear. They think of coffee as a stressor. In the wrong context, yes, it absolutely can be. But in the right dose, without the sugar overload and heavy cream, it may function more like a metabolic ally than a daily mistake. Here is what the research actually shows. Moderate coffee intake has been linked with better long-term health outcomes. What this suggests is not that coffee is a cure or some kind of magical shield. It suggests the compounds in coffee may help create a less inflammatory, more resilient internal environment when the rest of the pattern supports it. That distinction matters enormously, because people love to isolate one food or one drink and expect it to rescue a broken system. Biology does not work like that. A strong outcome usually comes from several signals all pushing in the same direction: better sleep, steadier insulin, less visceral fat, improved gut ecology, smarter hydration, and consistent anti-inflammatory inputs working together. Now ask yourself honestly, are you using coffee to support the body, or are you quietly turning it into a dessert that spikes insulin, inflames the system, and leaves you crashing harder an hour later? Because once you dump in sugar and heavy cream, the whole equation changes. Sugar spikes glucose and insulin, and repeated spikes worsen inflammation and insulin resistance over time. Insulin is traffic control for fuel. When traffic control breaks down, energy becomes chaotic. Practical takeaway: keep coffee as clean as you can, especially if your goal is better metabolic flexibility, steadier energy, and a lower inflammatory burden. And there is one more reason coffee deserves serious attention. Recovery depends on usable energy, not fake energy, real cellular energy. Your mitochondria are the body's power stations. They convert fuel into energy your tissues can actually spend. When inflammation stays chronically high, mitochondrial efficiency suffers. That means more fatigue, slower recovery, and a body that feels far older than it should. Coffee may help some people feel better not simply because they are more awake, but because several systems are being nudged in a better direction simultaneously: circulation, signaling, gut activity, and possibly inflammation control. That is a very different story than the one most people are told. Now, the third drink is the one that catches almost everyone completely off guard: high-flavanol cacao. Not sugary hot chocolate, not powdered dessert in a mug, real cacao with high flavonoid content. This is where things get genuinely serious. Cacao contains flavonoids that support vascular function. They help the lining of blood vessels actually work better. Healthy vessels mean better blood flow, better nutrient delivery, and better control over the internal terrain. If you use cacao, keep it dark, minimally processed, and low in added sugar so the biological signal is not completely drowned out. And there is more. Research points toward increased stem cell activity with regular high flavonoid cacao intake. Stem cells are part of the body's repair reserve. They help replace and restore tissue. When repair capacity improves, recovery can improve alongside it. But this is where cacao moves from interesting to genuinely important in cancer biology. One of cancer's major advantages is supply. Tumors do not just grow in empty space, they recruit blood vessels. They build new supply lines. That process is called angiogenesis, and it matters because if abnormal cells can keep expanding their blood supply, they gain oxygen, nutrients, and the room they need to persist. Some cacao compounds have shown effects in lab settings related to interfering with those supply line signals and damaging certain cancer cell lines. That does not mean cacao treats cancer. It means cacao contains compounds worth taking seriously because they may help the body resist the very conditions that disease exploits. That difference is everything. We stay grounded. We do not jump from a mechanism to a miracle. And now the whole picture starts to come into focus. Tea helps with repair signaling, inflammation control, and stress modulation. Coffee may support blood flow, gut health, and long-term resilience. High-flavanol cacao may improve vascular function and add another layer of support around repair and supply line biology. Different drinks, different strengths, one shared direction. Now here comes the part that can erase everything fast. Alcohol moves in the exact opposite direction. It can disrupt deep sleep, increase inflammatory load, and directly interfere with the body's repair systems. Deep sleep is when the majority of restoration work actually happens. Break that up repeatedly, and the body pays for it. Recovery drops. Hormonal control becomes messier. Immune coordination weakens over time. And no, the old story that certain alcoholic drinks are somehow protective does not rescue the bigger picture. What is clear is this: Alcohol adds strain. If your goal is lower inflammation, better metabolic control, and fewer biological conditions that help disease take hold, reducing alcohol moves you in the right direction. Full stop. The same warning applies to excess sugar. High blood sugar does not just sit there politely. It changes signaling, it drives insulin spikes, it worsens inflammation, and over time it erodes metabolic flexibility, which is your ability to switch between fuel sources cleanly. When that flexibility is poor, fat loss becomes harder, energy becomes shakier, and visceral fat becomes far more stubborn. Visceral fat is fat stored around the organs, and it matters because it behaves like an inflammatory organ, not just stored fuel. A drink habit that continuously pushes sugar higher can slowly build the very internal terrain we are trying to avoid. Quietly. Without drama. Until the biology eventually says otherwise. So the real takeaway is not simply drink tea, coffee, and cacao. It is deeper than that. We are trying to build an internal environment that favors repair over inflammation, better blood flow over stagnation, smarter immune signaling over chaos, and real mitochondrial output over exhaustion. That is what makes these choices powerful. They are simple enough to repeat, and repeated signals are precisely what biology listens to. And one more thing, because this is where people most often underestimate the power of daily habits. We keep waiting for one giant intervention, one dramatic treatment, one perfect protocol. But the body almost always changes through repetition. A cup becomes a pattern becomes chemistry, chemistry becomes trajectory. That is how risk builds, and that is also how protection builds. Here is the practical lens. If tea works for you, use it to replace a drink that pushes sugar higher. If coffee works for you, protect the benefit by not turning it into a dessert. If cacao works for you, choose the version that still behaves like food, not candy. We are not chasing purity, we are stacking signals in the right direction. Because the real question is never whether one drink is healthy. The real question is whether your total daily pattern is pushing the body toward repair or toward chronic damage. That is the lens we need. Not hype, not fear, direction. Which one are you actually drinking most days? And which one is secretly working against everything else you are trying to do right? I want to know, because that honesty is exactly where results change. What we do every day either cools the fire or feeds it. It either supports healthy supply lines or quietly helps disease-friendly terrain spread. And the most dangerous part is that the wrong drink almost never feels dramatic in the moment. It just feels normal. And that is exactly what should concern us most. Until one day, the biology says otherwise.